I'm alive. I'm alive.
Just
Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Don't forget to unmute your microphone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And welcome back once again, another edition of Sol Excalibre. Hopefully everything's going all right and you can hear me okay. I haven't even had the YouTube feed open yet, so I don't know if it's going all right or not. I'm sure people can post in the comments if there's anything wrong. Hello to people in the chat room already. Let me get the main window open. Well, by main window, I mean the YouTube feed, so I can just check that it is going okay and everything. Remember to mute it as soon as it starts up. But let's get into it straight away. It's just gone the 8 p.m. as per usual. The usual habit of, it's scheduled for 8 p.m, but it's usually a minute or two afterwards by the time I've got everything going. We've actually clicked the button and got on with it. Waiting for chat room to load. Okay. Click the thumbs up. And yeah, all right. Now we've got chat room. Now we're cooking with gas. We're cooking with fire. Yeah. Hello to everyone in the chat room. I will remember this time to come back and say hello to the chat room before I start off rambling. Because last week I missed half of the chat room because the cache had refreshed and a lot of it had already gone past. First of all, it is the 2nd of the 12th, 2019. The 2nd of December, 1st day of December was yesterday, but we're into December now. And here in the UK, the temperatures have dropped a lot. We've got that big Arctic cold front coming down over the UK. And yeah, you can definitely tell it's winter now. I've got my extra layers on. I've got my jumper on now and my usual, thick flannel shirt to keep me warm so I don't have to have the heating on, so I'm not spending money wasting on the heating. Just put more layers on. But we are here now on this edition of Sol Excalibre, we're number 15. And there's so much, so much that's happened over the last few days, or last week, that we could dig into. Just a quick mention of the subtitle, the title of this particular episode in the info box. The end is nigh to the beginning. The classic cliche. You used to see the guy in the sandwich board walking down the high street shouting, "The end is nigh, repent, repent, and prepare for the end. It's the end of the world, the end is nigh." Nigh is just an old word that means close or near to, close by, near to. So, depending on your relative position to the thing that you're looking at, the beginning can be said to be nigh to the end, and vice versa. Depending on how far away you are looking at it. If you stood right in the middle, then yeah, it might seem like a big distance from one to the other. When you're caught up in the details of that middle ground, the storytelling and all the different characters, and it's very similar to the Mahabharata. The complexity of infinite storylines. But that doesn't mean there isn't an end and a beginning. So maybe playing with words, but also it seemed appropriate as in a bridge. You complete the bridge, you've got the beginning, middle, end. And often in music, a bridge is that section in the middle, roughly in the middle of the song, where you you allow a bit of space to add some variance to the melody and the rhythm, the music itself, so people aren't just hearing a repetitive verse chorus structure. You know, it gives you a chance for your musicians to do little solos, or you know, do some variance in that musical structure, so that the people's mind, the listener's mind, isn't getting bored. So it acts as a bridge to transition from one part of the song to the next. In the same way, we've seen a similar incident recently. I'm sure you're probably well aware that there was another terrorist, as they're calling it, terrorist incident on London Bridge. And the bridge has one part that you enter on, the beginning, and one part that you exit from, the exit, you know, going either way. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it seemed appropriate to me to word it in that way. The end is nigh to the beginning. And in the middle ground, you get that little stage play, that Mahabharata, that complexity of infinite storylines, yet the arc of the main narrative is still there. It's carried through all these different little vignettes of activity, of emotion, of the chaos or seeming chaos of life and death and all that kind of, you know, poetic dichotomy stuff. But yeah, before I start rambling into all the other stuff, or into the main bit of ranting about all that lot, there's a couple of other things to mention as well. And I've just remembered I haven't sent invite to somebody. I'll do now while I'm thinking about it out loud. Multitasking out loud, or trying to. I thought if he's online at the moment and he's got the opportunity, he might want to join in, because a lot of this stuff might be quite relevant. But first of all, let me come back. And like I said I was going to, say hello to everyone in the chat room. Hello in the chat room. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for tuning in. On this moon day evening, we're back here again, and it seems like we're doing little circles in time, doesn't it? Yeah, this deja vu effect that seems to keep happening, where the same little script gets played out again and again and again, and the ignorance, maybe for some people, or just the sheer incredulity of they don't care of the mass, the general populace, seeing the same script occur again and again and again, but the media portrays it in such a way, you know, they're actively encouraging you to just go, oh look, it's happened again, this is the new norm, this is what life is like now, these kind of things happen all the time. It does start to seem that way when, you know, they occur again and again and again. But anyway, let me just say hello to everyone in the chat room. Lots from Tatro, hello. Thanks for joining in. And Cardini, hello, mates. Hope you're well. New Being, hello. And Shallow Depths. That's a difficult one to say with 8 teeth. Depths. And the plurality on it makes it harder. Shallow Depths, hello. And Nika Chief, hello, mate. Hope you're all right. Not getting too stressed out down there in that Babylon done. And Tazzy, hello. That's another one I forgot. Sorry, Taz. I'll do it now. Just not organised. I'd be dangerous if I was organised. I'm sure that's why they keep an eye out on me, you know, because they're worried that I might get too organised and consistent, and then they're you know, I'll be a thorn in the side. Yeah. Anyway, getting distracted. Dotty, hello. Thanks for joining in, right? And I'm sure I saw 1 or 2 other names in there. Soul Bollocks, yes, it is. Hello. I think I've said hello to everyone. It's in the chat room at the moment. I know it will be, you know, it will vary as time goes past and other people will join in the chat, and then the time travelers will watch it after the live broadcast. So yes, hello to everybody, and thanks for joining in the chat if you choose to. Right, get back to where I was. The end is the beginning. No, the end is nigh to the beginning. So I'm forgetting it already. Oh dear. So let's mention a couple of other things before I go back to that one main thing. But these are all more than likely interconnected. I think it's highly probable. You know, if you're doing it on your game theory kind of layout of, you know, looking at the various probabilities of how these things interconnect and have just so happen to occur in such a timing as they are at the moment. President Fart will be turning up here supposedly within the next few hours. He's due to arrive this evening in London, as well as obviously there'll be a lot of others turning up because it's going to be the NATO meeting within the next few days. I'm not sure exactly what the date is of the main meeting, but I know it's coming up within the next week. So a lot of major leaders and bureaucratic movers and shakers are going to be turning up to have this NATO meeting. And this is not long after Macron's little speech about how the NATO alliance needs to change, basically. They need to reassess what they're doing, and that compounds onto the recent, within the past few years, the changes to the UK military infrastructure, such that a large part of it is being integrated into the European state superstructure. And this is happening for all the other countries as well, not just here in Britain. You know, the military forces of the European nations are being amalgamated into NATO and Brussels, and that's then a federal constituent of the UN larger agenda, the globalized agenda. So we got them not turning up. And this is only just after the Prince Andrew debacle, and because some of the royals are going to be going to that NATO meeting, which I thought was quite interesting. The fact that the royal family involvement in what is supposed to be a state-run alliance structure. Well, why do they need to be there? What's their involvement with all this stuff? But of course, they're going to be there doing their influence thing and probably making deals for arms sales and arms manufacturers and stuff like that. But this is just a couple of weeks since the whole Prince Andrew all over the media, and that is still being pushed along. And even more so, the media is being encouraged to participate in the ravaging of Prince Andrew's persona. I'm not trying to suggest that he doesn't deserve it in any way. Oh, hello, Todd. Sorry, just noticed you there join the room. I'm not suggesting that he doesn't deserve it. I still think it's far from being justice. You know, he should be investigated and put on trial and all that kind of stuff. But my point is that he's been paraded in front of the public. And I mentioned this the other way, I feel that's been done deliberately because he's been used as a scapegoat in some fashion for some reason. I suggested that it's more about the changing of the chapter, and they're getting the public ready for the death of the Queen and the ending of the rulership of that particular branch of the family, and the bringing in of the new young generation of the royals. And they're going to do things different to the way old Queenie used to do stuff. So combine all of that, and now in the next few days, the BBC Panorama programme is going to air an interview with...
It's tonight.
Is it tonight? Is it? Right, yeah.
It's tonight at 9 o'clock. It is called, and I quote, hold on a second. It is called, it's 9 o'clock tonight, BBC One. It's called The Prince and the Epstein Scandal Panorama. Panorama hears from the victims of convicted child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Contains some scenes which viewers may find upsetting. I'm sure that the victims themselves were pretty upset as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, 9 o'clock,
Oh,
BBC One.
Think of how upset Randy Andy is. Yeah, that's the subliminal suggestion. Yeah,
Yeah.
like you're saying, the concern about the victims is being lost in the clamour of the let's attack Randy Andy and defending the royals and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's happening.
It'll have the panorama spin on it, no doubt.
Yeah. BBC Panorama's been a vehicle for them for a long time. So all of that combining at the moment, and then only a few days ago on the 29th of November, we have this latest terrorist event. They've labelled it as a terrorist attack. And then we can start digging into that suggestion. And I'm not gonna play any video clips or whatever. It's up to you to go and look for this stuff if you're interested in these kind of questions and some of the stuff that's going on. I'm not gonna, for now. Another reason. Let me just say another reason why I titled this week's show "The End Is Nigh to the Beginning" is because potentially this could be the penultimate broadcast of this show on YouTube, because next week's show will be the 9th, and just for the fact that it's coming up towards the end of the year and the Christmas period, etc., I'm gonna have the next week's show on the 9th will be the last show for this year, and then I'll have a couple of weeks break before, if the channel's still here, we start up again in the new year. But it's on the 9th, and the next day is the 10th, which is the date of the supposed YouTube changes, which could potentially see this channel shut down anyway. So it seemed quite appropriate to talk about that kind of element at the moment of, this could be a change of how things are done. Because as I've said before, just if they shut me down on here, that's not going to stop me doing what I'm doing and talking about these kind of things. I'll just end up having to do it on a different platform. In that note as well, it's probably a good job I remembered it from that point, because I hadn't put it in my notes. I have got the BitChute channel set up now, so if you make use of BitChute, search for me. It's just a normal channel name, Hairy Cookie Monster. There's nothing in particular on there at the moment, but it's set up and ready for me to make use of if needs be.
I've got one as well. I couldn't find your name. I don't know how you've spelt it this time, or whether you put gaps between things.
Exactly the same as I always
leave
spell
your
it.
links, guys. Leave your links if you've
I
got
will grab a
channel set
link
up.
and
Leave
stick
the
it in
links.
And the
I'll
London
stick it
Bridge,
in the chat anyway.
the London Bridge thing was an actor anyway. You can see a picture of him. I'll put on there. Maybe.
Hang on.
I would like to pose a question, if I may.
Yeah, go on then.
Yeah.
Yes, go on. Yeah.
Yeah. Since when did stabbing somebody become like an act of what they call terrorism? Like this has been going on for years and years, and so why all of a sudden? Well, not all of a sudden, like within the last 2 or 3 years, kind of any kind of, I'll call it an event or an incident, has now been classed as terrorism. It's just to promote fear. That's what I'm guessing. But it sounds scarier than just a stabbing. But not that stabbing should be taken lightly, obviously. But but they do like that word, don't they?
They would claim that they're classifying it as a terrorist incident because of the elements of the fact that the guy was a supporter of IS to a certain degree, but he was certainly a supporter of radical action. He was under a watch group. He was tagged and monitored. He'd been convicted before of planning to carry out terrorist attacks. So that side of it, plus the fact that he was wearing supposedly a bomb vest, even though after the fact they claim it's a hoax bomb vest, as in it wasn't functional, it wasn't explosives or anything, it was just made to look that way. And he chose to do his thing where he did on the bridge, attacking random members of the public. So that's why they're classifying it as a terrorist attack. But all of those elements are all part of their narrative scripting that they've repeated again and again and again. And there's a couple of things that you mentioned that add into those different threads. One is why are they reporting a knife crime as a terrorist attack when knife crime has been around for a long time, forever.
Exactly.
And this is something that they've been pushing for the last few years. I know we've talked about this before quite a few times. They're concentrating on telling the public about knife attacks now, whereas not even many years ago, a few years ago, you would not have heard about stabbings on the news because they happen fairly regular. You know, if you bother to look up the statistics, you'll find that there's quite a few stabbings in your city or in your town, unless you live in a tiny little community, hamlet or village somewhere. There's stabbings that happen. It's just that they don't bother reporting them much because they're considered just part of the crime of the area, so they don't need to constantly go on about it. But now, in recent years, they decided they want to control certain implements and tools that are available to people because supposedly they can be used to do stuff like this. So therefore your news now is saturated with news stories about a stabbing. There was one here in Birmingham a few days ago, I think it was last week, and there was one that actually before that at Star City that I mentioned on last week's show, but there was another one since that they talked about on the Birmingham news, the local news, central news, I think it is. So they're making a point of telling you about that stuff now because it links into the Hegelian problem reaction solution of them wanting the public to agree to further controls over certain things. And it's not just necessarily that they're talking about controlling knives as an implement that's available to the public. It's more about the fact of them being able to track and trace whoever buys the implement. So for example, they can bring in things such as certain implements, if they're sold to a member of the public, there's got to be a good reason for that sale, i.e. they're a professional butcher and they're buying equipment to trade suppliers. So it's like having a license, and there will be a list where the purchase and the sale will be recorded. So it will say Joe Bloggs, who's a professional butcher, bought these knives at such and such supplier, blah, blah, blah. It's about controlling and monitoring what the public have access to and how it is moving around, rather than the actual implement itself.
Also, it ties and they can say, well, now we'll put little chips in all the knives, and we might as well put them in everybody's shoes and everybody's coat and everybody's shirt as well. I just wonder what would be, because, this I will call it an event. This event kind of went global. It was all over the American news on all of their channels, over there. So I always say that, that if it's being broadcast globally, then there's going to be legislation coming off the back of this because,
exactly.
They don't get to hear about a Birmingham stabbing in America. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's that one element about how they've been nudging ready for the introduction of legislation to do with supposedly controlling knives or dangerous implements. But really, it's about monitoring the public and getting them to acquiesce to a constant surveillance state infrastructure. But the other part of this particular incident is, as you alluded to, is the way it connects to a much bigger global script of what is occurring. So it pushes that's why it was almost immediately labeled as a terrorist incident, because it pushes that narrative of the terrorists can pop up anywhere. You've got to be scared, folks. You've got to be ready to react, and you've got to be willing to accept
Yes.
The surveillance state infrastructure where armed police can turn up within seconds and somebody can be executed on the spot by those officers, and you as a citizen, as a member of that nation's public, are meant to outright support what is going on in that situation. So you've got that global war of terror element and script. But then we come to the fact that it's here in the UK, it's on that location, that bridge, almost to within a metre. It's in exactly the same location as the one in 2017. It's almost as if they couldn't even be bothered writing a new script. They just literally copied and pasted the one from previously. Yeah, we'll just change that name there, put that guy in there. There you go, done.
I was going to say that because I swear a lot of the footage was the same as what they released before. It just looked identical in some of the places.
Similar. Yeah, it does look very similar just because of the environment, but there are differences like the traffic and stuff like that. So it's not the same footage, but it does look very, very similar.
You know, when they said that's one of the most heavily looked at areas in case of CCTVs, but none of them were working the other time. Actually, they do. They all work, and they've got somebody at every camera saying, okay, false flag event, wait until they can be sure. And then they look both ways, all 3-4 different directions. And they've got people literally barging people off the street, slowing people down and say, okay, go. Now, we've got a 30-second window. And that's where they do it. And see, first time I saw this was in Spain. And they said, London terror attack. And immediately I thought, election special. Yeah, I just, like, as a headline, I just tacked those words on the end, election special.
Yeah. It's got a good
That's what I was going to say about when it comes back to when it comes back to being here. Why was it staged here in that location at this time? It's the same methodology that they did in 2017, the same methodology they used with Joe Cox, the alleged supposed murder of Joe Cox. This is part of now it seems to be part of the electioneering in the UK proper. You know, whenever we have an election or a referendum, they're going to do something like this.
Yeah.
The state, the bureaucracy will claim as a plausible deniability that the terrorists, of course, choose a moment like that because it's when it will get the most public impact. But the problem with that argument, well, there's multiple problems with that argument, but one of the main ones is, well, if the media didn't broadcast it to us all, we wouldn't have known it happened. So you are giving them the platform to do what you claim they want to do when you say supposedly you're not wanting to encourage the terrorists. So the fact that you then broadcast it to the public and go, alert, alert, terrorist attack, everybody be afraid, alert, 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 you're giving them exactly what they want. So next time there's an election, all the crazy terrorist people out there that are plotting will go, oh, it's election time again, guys, get ready, get your passport armor on. We're going to get in there and do something because the press will advertise us because the election's coming up. So the argument begins to fall apart almost immediately. Then we can get into other questions that help further derail any suggestion that the state might attempt at some kind of plausible deniability to say this is genuine terrorism, because the guy was on a watch list. He was actively part of a rehabilitation program after he had previously, this is another point but part of the same thing, previously been convicted of attempted terrorism. So he was tagged and monitored and undergoing regular meetups where he went, you know, and they supposedly helped him to better himself and turn away from radicalism and all that kind of bullshit. That whole infrastructure links into people such as Chowdhury, who has been around for a number of years in the UK now, and he's pretty much admitted to be an operative for the agencies. Whether he's just an informer or whether he's some kind of undercover operative or whatever, it starts to get into speculation then. But there's enough evidence to show that he directly works with and interacts with the agencies, MI5 and MI6.
Yeah.
And then you get into the other questions, such as how was a guy who was supposedly banned from entering London able to enter London, go all the way to somewhere like London Bridge while wearing a supposedly fake bomb vest and carrying 2 large knives? Now, the question here as well can be used as a trap or an entrapment to lead people into demanding things such as stop and search
Scanners.
or
Scanners.
regular checkpoints with scanners and stuff like. Yes, exactly. So you
Yeah.
got to be careful about how they're going to, or I should say you should be aware of how they're going to try and spin that kind of element within the story that they're telling, because they want the public to pursue certain questions because it leads them into that entrapment of then demanding further restrictions upon themselves. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
But
definitely.
the questions of how this guy was able to move around when supposedly he's on watch lists, he's monitored, all this kind of stuff, yet he was able to go to almost exactly the same place as that previous attack and carry out an almost identical attack to that previous, as if he was playing out a script he'd been given. Yeah. Then
Definitely.
some other observations that came from me when looking at the information and sort of piecing bits together. If you look at some of the video footage, and there's different video footage available out on the internet, the mainstream press here in the UK have been showing some of the particular clips repeatedly, because this is part of the reinforcement, where you might see the guy get pushed down by the members of the public, the heroes as they're being called, holding him down, and then the police turning up, and then it cuts just before the guy is supposedly shot. But a couple of points just before that I want to bring up. If you look at some of that footage, which includes aerial footage as well as security camera footage, as well as people's phone recordings and stuff, there was more than 30 police vehicles that I counted on just a casual pass of one of the aerial footage captures. And I wasn't meticulously counting every vehicle. Like I say, it was just a casual count as the video was playing. I was like, more than 30. How did more than 30 police vehicles get into that area within seconds, near enough, certainly within only a few minutes, 1 or 2 minutes of the incident beginning and occurring? They were there en masse. Yeah, and
They had a day off from Facebook and Twitter.
It wasn't just a random patrol vehicle that was in the area. No,
exactly.
There was all kinds of vehicles, all kinds of police vehicles. Yeah,
fire engines as
I know.
well. What was all that about? Why fire engines? What?
Probably in case he blew up, it would be standard operating procedure. It's same as there would be ambulances already en route and stuff like that. But there will be some vehicles and some police men and women, including armed police, stationed not too far away, because there's certain intrinsic and important elements of the London infrastructure in that area. So yes, there would be troops around in effect, but not 30 plus vehicles within seconds of access to that zone. That I highly question. It's almost as if they were either already en route or very nearby, ready for something to occur. There's then the same kind of question about the timing of how quickly the armed police response squad were there. But, and again, you've got to go and look for the footage and the pictures to see this. They waited. Yeah. They waited while the heroes physically fought the guy and pinned him to the ground. Then they come out from their little hidey spot on the corner of the bridge and proceed to run and whatever. So how quickly were they there, such that they had enough time to sit and wait for the fisticuffs to be dealt with?
Well, I've seen footage. Yeah, sorry, I've seen footage. The video obviously has been taken down since then. But I've seen footage of the people that were involved are apparently undercover police from the States over here on a training exercise. So, you know, and then next minute,
Well,
obviously that video got taken down very quickly.
That was, you know, I was just making a couple of observations from as it was rolling out on the breaking news feeds, and watching things like that aerial footage and whatever. But since then, all those questions start to build up and build up. Like I mentioned, stuff like the guy Osman Khan, I think his name was supposedly on a watch list and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then there's the other questions, such as the sheer coincidence that one of the heroes there was supposedly off-duty London Transport Police, and at some point on the video clips you can see him holding one of the knives that the attacker was supposedly using. And at a later point that is not shown on the majority of the video clips that were available via the UK press. You have to go on the internet and look for these clips. You see him take something out of his pocket and very deliberately and forcibly throw it aside. As I was talking about this with the other guys before we started, it's not like it was just some rubbish that he found in his pocket that he wanted to dump. Yeah, because that you'd just be like, whatever, rubbish in my pocket. He particularly went with force to the side, as if like, I want to get rid of this as quick as possible. Yeah, and it's difficult to see exactly what it is, but it's a small packet-looking thing with very white, almost like a little packet holding white substance of some kind. What's going on with that?
Pretty big. I've just put the link in the chat for it. So if you scroll, I'll put it in there a couple of times.
Still said it was a hanky, but it was something wrapped in a hanky. It was at least 200 grams. Yeah, I mean it was twice your average rolling tobacco packet. It was that heavy because you could see from the way through it. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, the way it moves through the air, it's not like it's tissue paper or something. Unless it's something wrapped in a hanky, but it still leaves
thrown down. You know, if you wanted to deliberately get rid of it, why don't you chuck it in the Thames? You know,
if it was just a tissue or a hanky in his pocket, why did he feel the need that he had to get rid of it at that time? It's very incriminating. Just the question of what the fuck are you doing, mate? Why do you feel the need to do that at that time?
And I also
another connected question. Sorry.
How come we've got the copy?
Got the what? Got the copy?
Why have we got the video to even look at? You know, is it a case of...
It's on the internet, but it's not being portrayed on the mainstream press. So that might just be that it was a video recorded taken by a member of the public that's been deliberately trying to be suppressed or Google washed or put in the memory hole. But the other connected question is that particular guy on that video is carrying one of the knives that the attacker was supposedly carrying. There's other video that's been recorded from inside a car or a vehicle, you know, somebody on their phone recording it. It's from just across from the bridge. It's the clip that a lot of them have used to show that the hero's fighting with him, and he's armed with two knives, two identical knives. So where's the other one? As one question. But also, if he supposedly, just before that video is taken, he had supposedly stabbed people enough to fatally wound them such that they were announced dead afterwards, there's no blood at all on those knives.
Yeah, and I've
so
also
did he stop to clean his knives each time after he'd stabbed somebody? The one that the supposed undercover officer was running off with, that was completely clean. There's nothing on it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Nubian was saying that that there's a how about the fire extinguisher in the whale tusk?
Well,
I don't know
that
about
was
a whale
else,
tusk or a and also Gary made a point that there was a incident at the Hague. Gary, are you still there?
There was this.
I'm just trying to.
He might have nipped out for a smoke.
Yeah, a huge Hague attack on the same day. The Hague is the headquarters of in international law, so
Yeah.
you know we got all that going down.
There were
You know,
reports. I was just going to say there were reports of that actual story being it was someone who had mental health issues or something. That's what they put that one down to. I think I did see an article about that the next day. But yeah, it did happen on the same day as the London Bridge. London Bridge is falling down. Yeah.
And the NATO leaders meeting in London. That's today.
Well, it's the gathering today. The actual meeting is in a few days' time. But
hey, Peter, sorry.
The questions about this is where it starts to get a bit strange. Depending on how much you choose to look into this stuff. Just those things that we've been talking about so far, I think are more than enough questions to start people to help people start looking at the situation and go, hang on a minute, this doesn't ring as true as they're portraying it. But dig a little deeper, start scratching a bit further into that script, and you have other questions. Yeah, the fire extinguisher, that's not a bad choice for somebody in that kind of situation, because it can be used defensively to try and keep somebody at bay that's armed with 2 knives. You know, you got the, I think in America they call it the 20-foot rule. And this is true with most, you know, forces, the police forces and the military forces have common sense instruction about this kind of thing. Somebody with a bladed weapon or somebody with an implement in their hand can cover quite a distance fairly quickly, certainly quicker than an officer can draw and fire a weapon, even if they're armed. You know? I know most of the British police aren't armed, but the point is you don't approach within 20 feet until you've got that person under control, and preferably get them to put the implement down or something like that. Yeah. You don't go within arm's reach of somebody armed with big stabby weapons. So having something like a fire extinguisher is a fairly sensible choice for somebody like in that situation, to try and keep the guy at bay and distract him and whatever. But it's a weird combination that just so happened that one guy thought, I'll get a fire extinguisher, while at the same time another guy thought, I know. Look at that narwhal tusk there. That's like a spear. Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it? So you have this vignette of I think there was 3 guys in the end that are jousting with this attacker. One using the fire extinguisher, one sort of prodding at him with the narwhal tusk, while another one gets him from behind and pulls him to the ground.
Did they have them in their man bags? You know, I often carry a fire extinguisher in my handbag, you know, like, you never know.
It's a water element. Yeah, it's a water element, basically. It's water to put out fire. Yeah, I've talked a lot about the Phoenix this year. And this event certainly is very catalytic to igniting a fire. I could say the fire of fear more than anything else, because it's a repeat of that war of terrorism to put fear into the public, so they demand the government do something, blah, blah, blah. But the water element of the fire extinguisher, combined with the narwhal tusk, narwhals live in water, but also they have a long-standing mythological and esoteric connection to a lot of other things that are quite important to some people and some organisations that concentrate in that City of London area. So
where did they get them
narwhals are supposedly he grabbed it off a wall display in the fish market. Just so happened to be a real narwhal tusk on a wall display in the local fish market, or the that borough market that's there, such that the guy could just grab it off the wall and run along with it. Where the fuck you seen that before? Eh?
That
Anywhere?
was the same
Do you really think
that was last year, wasn't it?
Valuable.
Yeah.
Something as valuable as a narwhal tusk just being
available
for somebody to just grab off.
No,
Maybe he could I don't know the details of this, but maybe you'll claim that he worked somewhere where it was behind the counter, so he had direct access to it in some fashion. I don't know. But the weird, it starts to go beyond coincidental, because the laws of probability, the laws of chance, or the calculations of probability versus chance, they start to tip over when all these things start to combine together. The narwhal represents the unicorn, basically. It's a unicorn of the sea. And it was commonly in olden days, the way the usual kind of bullshit goes. In olden days, people would find these and think they'd discovered the horn of a unicorn, all this kind of stuff. Yes, it's got a lot of mythological and esoteric history and meaning and relevance to certain groups that operate out of and in defense of and in propagation of the City of London. Now, again, to just let me finish, but to just further compound the weirdness of this, just to continue this point of there are some strange connections with this whole event. The date, the 29th of the 11th, 2019. If you reduce that date, in a kind of geometria sense reduction, you can achieve 223. 29 reduces to a 2, the 11 reduces to a 2, the 2019 reduces to a 3. So 223 is a relevant number to certain groups out there. It's also 33 days before the end of the year. And as far as I can calculate it with my crappy maths, it's 323 days since the beginning of the year. So these numbers, if it was just one number, again, you could it's just coincidence that it happens to be on a date where the number is similar to these numbers that some people like for whatever reason.
9/11, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's not just the one; it's multiple, combined with things such as the narwhal tusk, which again got me thinking. Oh, this is that water element effect being used against the fire of the phoenix. What's a good way to put out a fire is with a fire extinguisher. Fire of the phoenix doused with the extinguisher using or under the auspices of the power of the narwhal tusk, the unicorn's horn, which represents the spiritual, I'll call it that, the spiritual power of the system that claims authority. In other words, those that manipulate things to create chaos so that then they can claim their order is beneficial because they're the only ones that can bring order to the chaos.
True.
There are some very deep esoteric connections to this.
Yeah, Nubian saying to me it looks like a Freemason kind of game using these tools, and that someone was put into a test. The
London Transport Police has very close connections to the City of London Police. The incident on the bridge involved an undercover London Transport Police officer and Met officers and City of London officers. So they're all there together. And who was it that actually took the shot that supposedly killed him? It's a City of London armed response officer.
Yeah, they shouldn't actually work in the same jurisdiction. I've found the link there.
Sorry, just to mention the connections back to London Transport Police and John Charles de Menezes, who was shot after the 7/7 event.
And Cressida Dick. I found a thing here. Narwhal tusks used to be sold to the unsuspecting as unicorn horns back in the Middle Ages. So this has been sold to us as a unicorn, hasn't it? The whole event has been sold to us as a unicorn horn. Back in the Middle Ages, and doctors used to believe that they had healing properties such as the ability to cure the plague. Well, you know, a plague of indifference by the public.
Plague of terrorism, plague of, like you say, indifference and apathy, as in people are not agreeing to what the government's demanding, or they're not coming and participating in the vote for your enslavement sham.
Yeah, and the plague of disrespect for authority after Andrew, because he stands behind all the respect that people have for authority in a way. Yeah. He's a symbolic.
That's one aspect where I think they are. That's why I kept saying they're scapegoating him. Yeah, they are sort of putting him out as being almost like the magnet for all the Peter-Geddon hate that they've been whipping up for the past several years. You know, they've used the Peter-Geddon effect for the last several years to lead us to this point now where the public has agreed to the enactment of the statute that they're calling the Copper Law, which is now being used to shut down communication on the internet. Not just YouTube. I know at the moment with this upcoming date, you know, everybody thinks it's all about YouTube, but the Copper legislation is going to apply to the entire internet, any platform on the internet. So this is the justification, because if you protest against it or question it, they'll just label you as some kind of paedophile supporter or something like that. Yeah. You mean you don't want to defend the kids? Why don't you want to defend the kids? So it makes the perfect legislative body for them to then do their crackdown on the movement of information online.
Yeah, also, when it comes to authority, the reason the little boy shouted out that the king didn't have clothes, because he wasn't old enough to remember that the people that usually do that get hit by big sticks by the king's policemen. Yeah. He forgot the other aspect of authority. It's not just the fact that the king looks so beautiful in his new clothes, which don't exist. It's the fact that he's got the police to back him up, and people have forgotten that. The point now, if I could, to mention True Stream Media, they had a great video on why people get addicted to dopamine through their phones, and it is literally, it goes right through the process of where you reach a point in the lab where they had rats that could push a button that would release dopamine, but to get to that button, they had to go across an electric grid that hurt, but they'd still do it. And some of them would do it to the point where they killed themselves with this dopamine rush. Yeah. Now that is really worth thinking about.
And all they give us, Gary, I'm going to say all they give us is an advert. You know, that's what that little.
That's your reward. Yeah.
Yeah, you get the advert. Yeah, off you go.
I've mentioned it quite a few times, mate, over the years. The fact that these experiments have been known about for decades. They did it on gibbons as well, and they ended up with the same result. The gibbons would literally pleasure themselves to death, as in they keep pressing the button until they starve to death because they're too busy pressing that pleasure button. So they've known about this for a long time, and it's been integrated into these infrastructures. And, you know, we've talked about this so often over the last few years of sort of pointing at this kind of effect of social media and internet addiction, yeah, that people are in effect just becoming junkies. And if you give that thing to a child, you are breeding a junkie. You're turning that child's brain into the same structure that you get with people that are addicted to, you know, I'm saying junkie, you know, it's not just drugs per se, but it's the same kind of chemical addiction effect. Yeah, and remember it will not only cause people to be addicted, it will affect their ability to think, full stop. Yeah, so you end up getting total ridiculous contradictions, such as people saying you should not listen to people who tell you what you should do. Sure. You just think about it. It's just a complete and utter contradiction. You should not listen to people who tell you what you should do. But people just don't have the ability to think, so they don't realize that they're getting stuck into that kind of idiocy. Yeah, and then people wonder why nobody's interested in politics and shit. It's because they can't figure this shit out. They're just literally not mentally capable of it. And I said, you know, I'm laughing just for the sheer craziness, no pun intended, the sheer craziness of it. But that is the effect it's having. Yeah, and then you show them something. This is why I was ranting about the Prince Andrew thing the other week, because it's like, if the public, supposedly, you know, this is what the media is reporting, if the public bought the lie about Epstein killing himself, then the public will quite happily buy the lie that Prince Andrew was just friends with the guy and there's nothing else to it. And now here we are a week later, and the public is expected to buy the lie that a convicted terrorist plotter who was on a tracking watch list was able to go to London Bridge and do this shit.
Well, I think they see through lies. I've seen it more and more just in the local area, walking past the local Conservative candidate for the area, and someone's just written on the, you know, the picture sign that you see on the outside someone's garden or something, and it's just written lies across his face. And they just see through. I think that's sort of said that for a long time. You know, they don't mind lying to you. They lie to you openly now, and it's an accepted type of behavior, it seems, and people are quite happy for their leaders to just continually spout shit and lies. And you know, we've seen that all the more now the last few years, especially with Brexit and now with the royal stuff and everything else. You know, it just seems lying just seems to be the way you get out of it, and everybody is like, you know, accepting that. Well, I don't think they are really. We'll see what happens, especially with this election coming up, because people do see through it. People aren't daft. Let's see how they react. And
even though I don't know a massive amount of the details really, because I didn't bother pursuing every article that's been in the press about it, because it gets a bit it's like severe jingoism effect, you know, because the press has been all over the hero angle and the victims, you know, the two people that died who were so perfect. You know, they were such perfect people that had so much potential to give to the country. They were, you know, academic achievers and all this kind of good stuff. And I'm not trying to, you know, if those people are real and all that stuff's real, I'm not trying to put them down. I'm just pointing at how the press creates this yellow journalism effect that pushes jingoism and the victimization angle to play on people's emotion, play on the public's emotion. Yeah. But the other questions about this situation just get lost in that mire of, you know, think about the victims, but supposedly the parents of both victims, I think all of them did, both sets of parents put out statements saying that they hoped that the politicians wouldn't try and exploit the deaths of their children to further the upcoming election, and yet almost instantly all the political parties were jumping all over it and using it as electioneering bullshit. Huh?
Yeah. When it comes to the lies, I think it started a long time ago, but I see it as the beginning with Alistair Campbell. And he was a spin doctor. He was there to start spinning the truth, and now it has spun all the way around. We got to the point where, you know, because at first you sort of tell the truth, but you put your spin on it. So it started out as truth, but it's just been turned a little bit. Now it's just turned all the way around, and they just don't care. Yeah. Just
inverted.
And even the guy running along the bridge and throwing himself away, that could simply be to put a big line in between the people who will think it, you know, the people who will believe it, and the people who won't. And they'll believe something's going on because they've seen this little YouTube video. And they still want numbers of people who will go and click on that and will look at it, yeah? And they'll know all the places where that video is, and they'll record the exact number of people who've independently gone and watched it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's another element of all this stuff that's been happening over recent times, which I think is worth mentioning at this point as well, because this is just a further example, another repetition of the same process. And I've said this in different ways over the years. Remember, right back to like 2012, 2013. They want to know what you're looking at and who you're interacting with. So yes, all those views on those particular videos and stuff like that are all being tracked and traced and built into their algorithms so that they can build up a picture of how the public is thinking and feeling. So is the public scared enough? No, okay, we need to push this angle a bit more. Is the public sad enough at what's happening? No, then we push this angle a bit. Part of that, which I thought was, this was just a bit of a weird synchronicity for me personally, because obviously you weren't looking at the same things I was looking at, but I've got a habit of every so often I'll dip into some random TV show, just to see what it's like, what it is they're pushing, stuff like that. So I get a gauge of the general milieu of TV media that they're pushing out there, yeah. And I happened to click on one a few nights ago that's supposedly a science show. I think it's from Canada, called Nova, and it's been running for years, and they cover different science subjects and stuff like that. It's sort of like that kind of documentary show kind of thing. And it just so happened on the episode I clicked on, they were talking about nature conservation and using camera security technology to monitor animals' movements and stuff like that, to build up data so that they could get an overview of what's happening with a particular species. And it was just, it was just TV fodder to fill in time, as it were, because I don't watch TV per se. I use online services to pick and choose what I look at. But the thing that just absolutely jumped out at me and made me go, hang on a minute, this is a bit of a weird coincidence. One part of the show was covering some scientists that were studying the effect of fear on animal populations. And they were talking about how their claim for why they wanted to know this was because so that they've got an idea of what causes the endangerment of certain species, what effects it has on their ecosystem and stuff like that. And in particular, they were concerned about the decline in predators, which supposedly is an effect that's pretty much global and is happening in all different ecospheres. So it's not particular to like one species like tigers or something like that, but it's all predators are in decline. And they were studying the effect of the fear of a predator being within an ecosystem and how it causes all the other animals in that ecosystem to adjust their own behavior such that you have less likelihood of overpopulation, less likelihood of degeneracy within the genetics of the species, because they basically give up trying, because they're no longer under threat. There is nothing to threaten them. They don't bother trying, and they just go into all kinds of excesses like overeating and overbreeding and all that kind of stuff that can decimate an ecosystem. And these scientists were fixated on the element of fear as a biological mechanism of the natural law processes of an ecosystem. And when you watching it on the show, it was all very, like I say, typical TV fodder of it's a nature documentary kind of show. So there's nothing really in depth to it, but it was fixated on this portrayal of the concept of the use of fear of a predator was good for the species, for all the other species. And I sat there watching it and I think, they've basically just said exactly what the governments are doing and the kind of stuff we've been talking about for years, even back 2,000 years to the classic quote from Plato of the ruler will always be creating trouble somewhere so that the people have a need for a ruler. And they were talking about it as if it was a natural law process of reality. Therefore, it's good that we have that fear element of predators. So is a lot of what the governments are doing with this war of terror all about creating that fear of a predator so that you are more likely to actually be productive and do something rather than falling into supposedly, allegedly, levels of degeneracy and excess because you no longer have a fear that something's out to get you. Bit of a long explanation, sorry, but to me it felt very, very relevant to all the stuff that had happened recently and all the last few weeks. And I was like, they're saying this on a nature program that's got nothing to do with politics. Well, apart from them complaining about not getting enough funding and stuff like that.
I mentioned the other week how popular it is to eat in nowadays. Just Eat and Glovo and all these different delivery companies, and they'll just they'll deliver £5 worth of sandwiches or whatever, and loads of people are doing it. You can stand here outside the internet cafe you see 20 or 30 of them driving past an hour, yeah? All delivering from Chinese takeaways to McDonald's, yeah? It's really popular now not to go out, yeah.
There are services that will deliver absolutely anything, right? So if you want, you know, a bag of sweets from down the shop, there's people that will deliver it for you. And then you got the latest, the latest corporate, yeah. The latest corporate appropriation is those companies out there that will deliver basic ingredients to you with an instruction of how to cook them. So they send you a box of potatoes with instructions of how to make mashed potatoes. Supposedly people are buying that crap, but yeah, it is definitely geared towards the Agenda 21, 2030 effect of getting you all crammed into big mega cities where you don't have to leave your little cubicle. Everything will be delivered through your letterbox to you.
Well, what's the opposite of fear?
Does further that.
Confidence.
Exactly. So they've got us inverted again, haven't they, with the fear, and been doing a good number on us, especially our generation.
That's the attempt.
Yeah, that's the attempt, exactly. And the way people should now be seeing the structure of it, like you say, and that the way in which they engineer these stories time and time again. They're coming around that fast, you should be able to see it quite clearly, you know, with the same sort of.
It's only been. Is it? I'm not sure. It's not even fully 2 years, is it, since the previous London Bridge attack, 2017?
No, and then there was another one in the market, wasn't there?
Well, that one was incredible because on that one you had Nicki Minaj making a video 1 week before the attack, yeah. And I've got pictures on my Flickr still. You've got her standing in a little stairwell just underneath the bridge, and she's standing right next to a piece of graffiti, which you can identify in one of the official pictures from the thing. And a guy had fallen right where she's literally standing next to the spot where the guy's going to fall dead a week later. Yeah, in her video, you know. But anyway, Spain, they're having the climate conference, aren't they? So I thought I'd put this up because this was something that really connected with my mind today. The one thing the climate scientists don't include is how the sun feeds energy into the earth, particularly at the poles. Now, remember, a magnet, they don't stick side by side. Well, they do, but they prefer to stick end to end. Yeah, so it's in the winter time when you have the when you have this here. Yeah, it's in the winter time. Now let's look at a global map of wind. Now remember what you're looking at with a magnetic field. You've got two magnetic fields. You've got one going one way. Look at this. Look at this image. Can you see the little yellow lines?
Yeah.
And you've got one going the other way. Takes a minute. There you are. That's the North Pole. Now, right now, yeah. There it is. That's the sun connection because it's winter and we're getting all this magnetic energy flowing in here. And this is driven by magnetic energy and they don't add it in. They don't add it into their calculations.
Yeah, it's driven by cow farts, man.
Yeah, unbelievable, huh? Ain't fucking hell. Now, the odd thing about this is it should actually be going around in a ring. Yeah, just one single ring. And that way you have a single ring going round. Yeah, which is, hang on, let me see if I can get, we need to go there, and then we need to expand. Normally the North Pole will kind of look like that, yeah? So you'll have one ring going around the outside, so one magnetic field, as it were, dominates. But because the magnetic field is dying down, you're now getting two. Yeah, it's now splitting in two. Yeah?
Yeah, there is a faint... I was just going to say there is a faint outer circle outside those two.
Yeah, added to the fact that the North Pole used to be there, then it went here, then there, and now it's sliding across again and might eventually end up, at least one of the poles is going to end up somewhere around here. Yeah?
Indian Ocean,
yeah. Yeah, this is where the South
Pole is. The other one will be near the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, I was thinking about that the other day. I wonder exactly where it is. What's this? 8798 East. So we want 87. 150, 187, 87, 91. No, that's 87, 91 east. What's the opposite of 90 east going to be?
121.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, 81, about here. Yeah, which happens to be one of the most earthquake hit regions in the world. Yeah, this is going to be the opposite. So this could be the North Pole, supposedly. Yeah, if the Earth would take about 100 years
it won't stay there. Or I think it's highly likely that it won't stay there. It's a transition period. The poles come towards what we now call the equator, and then they'll go back again. They might cross over and change polarity, but they don't stay in the middle. They come and then split apart again. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's still unknown. Suspicious observer has said it may change the tilt of the Earth for a little while, and then it will go back again. But this is what it should look like. This is summer, by the way.
Just a single circle. That's over the Arctic.
Yeah, that's usually what winter ought to look like, I think. And it probably will do on the North Pole later on. But for the moment, I took a look today, and it was perfect match for that other image.
A dipolar rotation, because that's where the Birkeland current from the sun is coming into what is the shell that is the Earth, because that's the shell of the Z-pinch.
Yeah,
I've suggested before that the Van Allen belts are probably the outer edges of that shell, and that's why we have all that interference and radiation and such like in that Van Allen belt, what they call the Van Allen belts. It's plural, isn't it?
And this is something
else I've got to mention, because I just noticed somebody put it in the chat, because it was in my notes as well. It's another one of those blatant lies that have been on the media recently that the public is expected to just swallow. I know a lot of people have been calling it out because it is just so insanely ridiculous. But 31 is the new 50. Yeah, did you hear that one about the claim that they're going to introduce 50,000 new nurses? But that's just because 19,000 of them will actually still be employed as nurses. Therefore, they were nurses now, or they are nurses now, and they'll still be nurses when this thing's supposed to take effect. So supposedly that number is being added into the total. Yes, it's not 50,000, it's 31,000 new nurses that they're supposedly going to add. But that's why I'm saying the 31 is the new 50. Yeah. But yeah, some of the clips of that, I can't remember a name now off the top of my head, but the one female politician trying to argue that point with fucking Piers Morgan of all people. And it's just so sad. And yet that is the level of lie that they're expecting the public to just swallow. I think it was Cardini mentioned that in the chat, so thanks for reminding me. And hello to everyone in the chat. I'm just sorry, I was distracted. I'm scrolling back up.
Yeah, you haven't said hello yet. It's like, yeah, it's. I
did at the beginning.
Oh, you did. Yeah, sorry.
Check again because I know people always join later. Stewie, hello. Thanks for joining us. Channel 4 cut the footage of the cop dropping his hanky. Yeah, if it was a hanky. Yeah, the thing about the shots being fired as well. RT, Russia Today, made a point of uploading the video clip twice. I saw they'd uploaded it the other day. I think they were trying to make a point of the fact that they had a copy of the video footage that showed the guy actually being shot.
Yeah, but I saw that, yeah.
And this is one of the number of questions that, you know, come up around this situation. On that video, you can see the guy gets shot once. Yeah. Even though on all the other clips that are played on the UK press where they blank the video at the point just before we shot, but you hear the audio of 2 shots being fired. Yet on the video clip that RT show, you only see one shot being fired.
Yeah.
And that shot hits the guy in the body, in the upper chest. And you see a puff of stuff come off his chest, but you don't see any exit effect. You don't see any exit debris. You know, you don't see any blood or nothing. You just see this pfft of stuff come off the guy's chest. You don't see any other shots. And yet some of the UK press has reported that supposedly 6 shots were fired.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions about that as well. It's like they claim he was shot in the head, which is again reference to John Charles de Menezes. This is a technique they were taught by ISIS-Rael, by their supposed experience of dealing with Palestinian bombers and whatever, where if somebody's wearing a alleged suicide vest, the best way to deal with them is shoot them in the head as fast as possible. Watch out for copy. Oh, you're playing now, video. Okay. Shoot them in the head as fast as possible, because then you end the possibility of them detonating their device.
You mentioned that as another event which did draw my attention about when they shot the so-called attackers, suspects, whatever, and I thought they killed them, was the Woolwich attack. Remember? That looked like a Sweeney kind of movie scene. Remember, they jumped out of cars and fired multiple shots at these guys, and then they were all in court about 2 weeks later. I thought, well, what did you use? Like pellet guns or something? Because if you were using live rounds of bullets, you'd have killed them. So there was that was a strange one, a strange event. There's lots of questions around all these events, all of these things that have happened, and over the last since, let's say, 7/7, which is when it started here, I suppose, again, in a big way. And we've had sort of, and then other countries around the world, and Europe and France in particular as well, have all had these, it seems the fear has been spread, across, the masses, like you say, to keep us there, keep us held in this sort of, belief that, there's they're out there, they're going to attack, they're going to do this, going to do that. And like you say, it's perfect timing as well to take Prince Andrew's story onto page number 2 and take the heat off the royal family. That's another big sort of thing I pointed out to me. It's why all that side people are going, trying to digest that one. They throw another, false flag terror attack into the mix. So, it seems like that's how they want to steer people.
Fear as a driving force.
Oh yeah.
To get you to acquiesce to what they are suggesting. Hang on. I keep scrolling down. Committed escaper, hello.
They put a trailer up for this video the other week, the myth of extinction. And like Cookie says, maybe they've tried to put it up to YouTube and they've refused it. So you have to go to BitChute to find it. The myth of extinction.
I've not seen them upload it on YouTube yet, and it might be because of the new situation on YouTube.
The trailer was pretty good, yeah?
Krishna, hello. Hope you're doing all right, eh? A narwhal tusk, narwhal is a bit like a seal, it's a air-breathing mammal that lives in the water. It's got a big single tusk horn. How's it spelled? Is it N-A? Oh, you put it in there, yeah. N-A-R-W-H-A-L. Narwhal.
It's like a Viking horn, is it?
You probably could. I don't know if it is hollow. It might not be.
No.
But I suppose you could hollow it out and use it as a drinking horn. But yeah, it's part of the connection to the mythological legends about unicorns. But if you look at it from the esoteric meaning, then it's coming from the water element. It's a mammal that lives in the waters. The waters were there that God divided to create everything. So the waters are considered to be like the magical ether, the element that contains all the magic, the spiritual force, the energy that makes everything else happen. So it has that symbolic meaning to it as well.
Oh, it was that Australian guy who was like Wild Frank. He was stabbed by a swordfish through the heart. But I think somebody has been stabbed by a narwhal while at sea. Yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing, but I think that was a swordfish, wasn't it? Do you remember him?
Is that Steve
I
Irwin?
think
You mean?
Steve Irwin.
Yeah, he used
That
to.
was a stingray that got him.
Yeah.
Oh, Stingray, that's it. Yeah, but you know, I mean, bloody hell, man, that is quite the spear, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
And Sui Generous, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat. So I was scrolling down while we're chatting, trying at least check in on the chat and see who's there. I know I mentioned this to you guys before we started tonight. I've been trying to remember where I've got this memory from. I've got this vague memory of a connection to a question about narwhals and the narwhal tusks in association with a previous terrorist event. But I'm not certain if my memory is just being bad, flabby and whatever, and whether it's just because we talked about this subject before. We talked about the narwhal tusk and the connection to unicorns and whatever before. But I've got a vague, nagging memory that the very same question has come up in relation to a previous terrorist event. And I just can't piece the memory back together.
There's that much
to surprise me.
Remember. Yeah, there's been that many.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's so much of this stuff now. It's so saturated. Yeah. And I mean, when I was describing that nature program, well, it's science program covering a nature subject, where they were making that kind of implied argument that the element of fear of a predator was necessary. It was actually healthy and beneficial to all the other species to have that predator there, therefore justifying the use of fear, while at the same time we've got this increasing body of evidence that's been building up for years now that the system is outright building this infrastructure, this internet and social media infrastructure, in such a way that they can use it as a psychological manipulation tool, not just in some vague, airy-fairy sense of they show you some nice pictures and shit like that. No, this really digs deep into people and affects people en masse. Yeah, and we've got more than enough evidence now to back that up, because the number of whistleblowers and whatever that have come forward with evidence to show that, yeah, the software, the algorithms, the infrastructure has been designed and built in such a way that it's meant to get you addicted, and then from that addiction they can manipulate your perceptions and beliefs and thinking processes so that they can steer you like an automaton almost. Yeah, that's the desired attempt, is to make you like an automaton. But the main element is them having the ability to monitor you in the first place. Yeah, because obviously a lot of those psychological manipulations require the data beforehand of your current state. So before you start an experiment, you need to know what state the subject is currently in, so that you can have a baseline to measure any alterations from. So part of the reasoning why they've been pushing this need to be connected, as in changing the structure of society such that you have to have a phone so that you can do this, that, and the other. You have to have an email address. You have to have an internet presence of some kind, like an online account of some kind on some platform, so that you can be validated as being a real person, which is a complete inversion in and of itself, because you are already a real person. Creating a virtual image of yourself, and then it's the virtual image that validates your reality, is a complete contradiction, inversion in and of itself. Yeah. But they need this infrastructure in place so that they can monitor your levels of fear, your levels of sadness, your levels of anger, your levels of reasoning ability, and the questions you ask about the information they're pushing at you. Yeah, it's a good connection as well to what I think they're suggesting with the myth of extinction video that they've done. Yeah, this is part of the new infrastructure of society globally. It's not just going to be in one country like in China at the moment. That is going to be spread into every other nation. Is going to be doing the same. Most of them already are. They're just not as upfront about it as China is.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a good thing with China. Yeah.
Yeah, but China is that model, isn't it, that they're all adopting and taking on, and seeing the benefits of it in the sense of how much money they can make as well. Obviously, that's the big thing, with how they want this thing to run. Plus the paranoid, the schizophrenic sort of controllers, whoever want to harness data, want to get to know what we're thinking and doing, and that also feeds into the AI stuff as well. They're building, and this, this machine, this old thinking and whatever. They're trying to feed this new generation of computers and supercomputers and all that is on its way. And we're already living through it now. They're already doing these experiments on us, like they've done with the Cambridge Analytica type scandals that they've thrown at people. And what do you think about this? They're harnessing all your data. They're taking everything, and we're just being, as you say, all the time normalized to that as being what they do. So when people go on, and especially young people, they don't give a shit about that. They just carry on, and because they're living with the device as they grow older and older and older, it's too late then, in the sense of realizing that, well, all this data is collected. Where do you go now? You've got your whole life on here. You have got your avatar all set up in your whole, internet existence. And like you say, it is a drug. It's a dopamine thing. It keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. The hits get more and more and more, while they, like you say, with the rats in the experiment, they just kill themselves in the end because they just want so much dopamine. They end up starving to death or something. So, that's how they sort of seem to want to have the younger minds already programmed, into the adulthood of the the 5G network and all the whatever. So hopefully that's not the case, and they don't get addicted, and they put the damn devices down, get to stay with their friends and get in groups and start talking to each other. And let's hope they do that, and they're doing that now, and they're realizing this for what it is. And as they get older into their teens and early 20s, they're the ones who will be in greater numbers than us are at the moment in our generation, in a sense, where the programming, has been quite strong in a lot of us, especially a generation above me, the real older ones, who really are very much more programmed from that sort of post-war era sort of stuff, with all their sort of how they were brought up and their social programming at the time. So it's all sort of, I think as we go through this, it will get easier. I think there will be that rejection of it, if you like. They try and invert it, but we're switching it back.
It is definitely already happening, and I think the evidence for that argument is the fact that the system is having to react to it happening. So they're already starting to, or have been for a while, trying to appropriate that truth, that information that is revealing that truth to people. In other words, the kind of stuff like the video you've shown earlier from TrueStream as well, the one about why you can't stop clicking, where they go into the dopamine feedback connection and stuff like that. And it's subject and material that they've covered before, but that puts it all into one 32-minute video. But the point is, if you give that kind of stuff to a young child, their brain chemistry and their thinking structure, their mind, is molded from a very early age to be reliant on that stuff incoming, that dopamine feed from the technology. So what the system's started to do to try and appropriate the truth of people seeing this for what it is they've now got Silicon Valley jet setters, influencers, to start promoting this concept of dopamine fasting. In other words, they are acknowledging that the technology has this dopamine feedback effect, such that they are suggesting that you have a break from it periodically. The fast from it is how they're appropriating that reality. Yeah, you know, we've often almost continuously, nearly every episode, we mention something about the, you know, put your phone down, try leaving it alone for a bit, go out in nature, go and do something else for a bit, you know, disconnect, have a break. Yeah, but now the system is reacting where they have these trendsetter Pied Pipers, these Silicon Valley influencers, talking about how it's trendy now to do dopamine fasting. In doing so, they are justifying the use of the technology to give you an overload of dopamine in the first place. So they're normalizing the truth of the information that this stuff has an addictive effect on human biology. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
By having these people turn it into kind of the latest trend to do, like drinking your own piss. Now it's, oh, I'm having a dopamine fast. I leave my phone at home for today. You know, I'm having a dopamine fast. But in doing so, people will then treat that as being, or treat the chemical effect, the addictive effect, as being normal. It's like, oh yeah, we know it does that, but I'm okay, mate, because I had a dopamine fast last week. So it's all right that I spend the next 27 days doing nothing but click, 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 click. Oh, I'll have a dopamine fast next week. Click, 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 click.
Yeah,
do you see what I mean? By presenting it to the public in that way, that they're saying, oh yeah, we know that you've found out about it, so shit, we better appropriate. So it's okay as long as you have a fast every now and then.
I noticed that guy, he was talking about this clicking, people clicking on phones like playing a fruit machine. And he said that they've even fucking changed the algorithm on Instagram, did it, yeah? Where if you put a picture up, you won't even see the likes that people are giving you until, you know, you reach about 20 or 30, and then it'll come through in one go. So you're sitting there thinking, oh, nobody like my photo. For about half an hour, you know, you get this craving for the dopamine likes. And then about 30 of them come in together, like within a fruit machine. I've said this before. Yeah. And there are people on Twitter and Instagram, like, I mean, Brian Harvey had some girl, in his comment on YouTube. I said, she's playing your Twitter feed like a fruit machine. Yeah, she's subscribed to Kanye West and fucking Jay-Z and Brian Harvey, and she doesn't care if she gets a like or a little bit of confrontation. You know, she just wants some affirmation from somebody. And dopamine is about affirmation. So we got to ask deeper, you know. Yes, you're alive, you're okay, and you're feeling okay. This is the kind of affirmation that people really like. Yeah? They don't like being told, oh no, you're doing something wrong. You know, they like to think they're doing the right thing, and dopamine is what does that. It tells you you're doing the right thing by eating food. Yeah. You get some dopamine.
That's what it's
good thing. Yeah. That's what it's
for in your biological system. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's to help you survive in this reality by rewarding you for when you do something that helps your own survival. So you eat a good food. Oh yeah, this is great. This is lovely. You try to eat something shit. This is nasty. And your thinking structure is programmed to say, choose the other one. It's nice. It's good for you.
And I was going to say, turn on PlayStation 4 instead.
But historically and evolutionary, I think you'll get more dopamine feedback if you're nice to your family and you're. So they're hooked into that part where the dopamine can actually measure people's social response and whether you're a valued member of the group, and that makes your dopamine feel good. And they've recreated that part, and they're taking that part.
Extrapolate that, like you're describing, that family effect or familiar effect, where familiar, that's right, familial, I think is right, whatever. They're taking that effect and extrapolate that to a mass of the country's populace. They're doing the same thing where the algorithm is written and weighted in such a way that instead of the family unit being the beneficiary organism, the nation state or the state bureaucracy is the beneficiary organism. Yeah. So the algorithm adjusts what people are presented with so that they encourage them in a dopamine reward pathway to support what the state is asking them to support. See, I know it's a really gross simplification, but imagine there's the bureaucrat sat behind his desk going, oh, we want everybody to start wearing blue hats. Tell the algorithm, right, tell the public to start wearing blue hats. And then they don't have to do complex planning of how they present a propaganda campaign and the kind of psychology required to get people to do. No, that's all in the algorithm. That's already been pre-written by people who are skilled and expert in that particular field. It's all been compartmentalized into a process. So the end result is this algorithm that responds to the request of a singular individual who says, get the public to do so and so. And I know, like I say, I know that's a massive simplification, but that is what they have created and what they are implementing. Yeah, this is why I mentioned earlier, they need to be monitoring you all the time, because to know how to get you to move to point B, they need to know where you are now at point A. So what state of mind are you in and shit like that. Then they know what to apply to get you to move to point B.
Yep.
This is why they want to know everything about you as well. This is why data is the new gold. And that gold rush effect has been used to encourage the compartmentalized, ignorant people to actually go along with the plan, because people are just working to earn a living because they've got to feed their family and all that kind of stuff. So they, just get on with it. And then as you go higher up the pay scale, the more conscious participation there is. And people know what's going on, like some of the Google whistleblowers who said, yes, our stuff was deliberately designed to make people addicted, but they're paid much bigger and bigger wages. Yeah. So it becomes like the bait of the cheese for the mouse. The bait gets bigger and bigger and bigger because they're asking them to move further and further distance from any moral foundation.
Remember the phrase, use it or lose it. And the ability to think for yourself. Most people never used it anyway, so they don't even notice that it's being taken away. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Yeah, and you how you get through to people. Think for yourself. Oh, that's too difficult. The government's doing it for me. Well, you need different. What's the difference? Yeah,
and just like any other muscle, the less you use it, the more it will atrophy. The more it will weaken and become less able to cope with requirements when they occur. So, you need to run up the stairs, but your legs are no longer strong enough to run up the stairs because you spent the majority of your life sat in a chair of some kind, yeah?
Or
it's a bit of a silly simplification.
Or you go to your local healthy Chinese takeaway, your Indian takeaway, and you've got to stand for 20 minutes in the queue in front of all these Glovo and Just Eat and food delivery people, and you start thinking, why don't I fucking do that myself? Don't, because it will mean using digital money apart from anything else. Although there is one good thing about all these delivery people. If you can pay in cash, you can also give tips, and tips isn't an anarcho-capitalist activity. Yeah, because tips are never taxed, etc., etc. And a lot of these people don't earn much money.
It depends what country you're in, right?
But yeah, tips generally.
In some places.
Yeah, tips generally speaking a good way to keep cash blind and not taxed, basically. Yeah. But that also means, if you do use somebody to deliver to you, you can say to him, look, man, tell the boss, keep this off the digital. I'll just take the sandwich and give me an extra 10 quid's worth of the vegetables with it, which I'll pay for in cash, and I'll tip you, and it won't go on the digital feed. Any little thing, just rebel, for fuck's sake. Yeah, don't take it sitting down. Yeah.
You might have to reason with a drone in the future, which might be a bit difficult.
That's one of the other parts of this. Sort of, we get into the stage where a lot of people, I don't think it's true to say it's the majority yet, but it's getting close to. A lot of people have been so embedded into and so used to that environment for so long that they don't even have like I was talking about earlier, they don't have the ability, they don't have the thinking ability, the cognitive ability to be able to look at what is occurring and realize how they are succumbing to it without it being in their face. Yeah, we've got to the stage where the in your face effect isn't even really reaching some people. So when politicians blatantly lie to the public, 31 is the new 50, they're expecting that the level of cognitive ability amongst the public will be so suppressed that the public will just go, oh, yeah, a politician says it's this, so it must be. Yeah. And now these algorithms are manipulating people in such a way that even when you show it to them, they have difficulty of putting the connecting the points together in their own head so that they can see the picture of what it is that you're describing to them. Yeah, they don't realize that they are being manipulated. So like you mentioned earlier in that article where it's talking about the one website platform, I think it was Instagram, saving up the likes till it's a bulk. Yeah, because the algorithm is monitoring that person's activity and saying, well, we don't want to oversaturate them with showing them the true results of what the interactions are that they're receiving on their channel. Instead, we need to get them into this rhythm of a certain amount of reward, and then you get a fast period, because if there is no fast period, the reward loses its effectiveness. Because if you eat chocolate every day, chocolate isn't as meaningful to you. You don't enjoy it as much as if you only get it every so often. So in the same way with the dopamine rush, they have adjusted the algorithm to monitor you such that it will go, well, yeah, we don't want to give Joe Bloggs too much dopamine at the moment because we gave him a bit last week and we need him, you know, he's got to be on this kind of moderated level. So we'll give him a bit here and then another bit there. Not too much because we don't want him to get fed up with it. We don't want him to get bored with it. So they are working on the efficiency of the reward feedback process so that it guarantees effectiveness in the way that they want. In other words, being able to manipulate your psychology, your feelings, your thinking. But you try and talk about that idea to people and they think you're just a technophobe or that you're a Luddite or shit like that. Yeah, they can't link the dots together exactly because of how the continuous saturation of this environment has fucked up their thinking to such a degree that they no longer have the ability to put 1 and 1 to equal 2. They go, what's 1? I need Google to tell me what is 1. What does 1 mean? And what's this plus sign mean? I don't get that either. And if I try and do both of them together, I get really fed up and I need some dopamine, man. So you can't actually just switch everything off and just sit and think and contemplate and even wonder, you know, just think, oh, what would happen if I did this? Or what would happen if such and such happened? And this and thought exercises. They don't do that because there's no dope reward with that. Supposedly, allegedly. I would argue that there is. It's just that this environment has so pushed people into this other way of being that they don't remember it. And like you mentioned earlier, if you're old enough to remember the world before the internet, this stuff has less effect on you, or it is more likely to be less effective on you. Whereas if you've never known any different, if you're like, I know it's become quite a bit of a cliche now, if you're a millennial, you never knew the world before the internet. So this kind of stuff is really hard for you to conceive of because to you, it's just like air. It's another resource that's just there all the time.
Yeah. I suppose when we were younger, it would have been the television, would have been that sort of...
Yeah.
And then that was sort of, if you like, rationed a little bit. It's, you know, they didn't give you too much of that, or what was for your generation, kids, for instance, it was a few hours per day. And we've seen that obviously change just to 24/7, everything, you know, kids and telly and everything else, you know, everything's gone, you know, non-stop. So yeah, it's something that they'll you know. So I'm just looking. Yeah, I'm looking at those pictures Gary's showing as well.
And the irony of a website called "Put Away the Phone."
Yeah, well, yeah, but I was thinking as well, they force you into having an email at the very least and some internet connection via a device because of some government things, the way they're set up now. You can't get to them unless you've got an email address.
And it gets into that. It's not difficult territory; it's just uncomfortable territory for some people because they find it uncomfortable to deal with contradicting ideas. So they need a black and white answer. So either they demand that you tell them that they can or cannot use the internet. Yeah, there's that projected, because it is a projection. This is people who are not dealing with their own inner problems and conflicts project it out onto others. So they see you on a screen. That means you're automatically an authority figure in their reality because this system has programmed them to think that way. So when you say something, they think you're giving them an order and that they have to follow that order. So when we talk about stuff like that, they automatically think, oh, well, you're telling me I can't use the internet. You're a hypocrite because you're using the internet. You're telling me I can't use the internet. It's stunted thinking again. Yeah, they're not able to deal with both concepts and have the processing power to realize that the answer for themselves is what is right for themselves. They could be somewhere in between where you can use the internet, but be aware of this stuff so that when it presents you with the usual kind of meme programming, your critical mind kicks in and goes, oh, question that bit, 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 question that. And you go through your own thinking process to deal with what you've been presented with, not just the click, oh, it tells me to do this, so I must obey. Yeah, the mobile phone is your brain in the palm of your hand. You know, Google says do this, so I do this. That's a phone zombie. But people like to project that shit at each other, especially in this environment on the internet where so many people have that perception that has been given to them that if they see somebody on a screen or on an article that they put up on the internet, that automatically means they must be obeyed as some kind of authority. The internet can be an amazing tool, but that's what it is, a tool. It's not your life. When the internet gets turned off, you won't die. It's not oxygen. So for me, it's helping people have that frame of mind to be able to go, yeah, I can use it, I can make use of it, and then when I've had enough or when I feel it's getting to me in some fashion, I put it down again, go and do something else.
I think that one's great. You can't swipe it, son. You'll have to walk to the next painting. It's in an art gallery.
You're saying that this has been, I know I've mentioned this before, and it's been part of the reason why I rant quite often about this kind of stuff. I witnessed my young great niece, I think it is, once or twice removed, whatever. I witnessed my young niece doing exactly that to the big plasma screen TV that my family have up on the home. Yeah, a little kid, she's only a couple of years old, and she's standing there doing that on the TV screen, trying to get it to swipe. And the first things that was going through my head was that kind of stuff. Yeah, of like, it's not that kind of screen. But then it had me thinking, like, where has she even got that concept from? She's got that from watching all the other adults around there, sitting there with a screen in front of them doing this.
Yeah.
Expecting the child to entertain itself, educate itself, look after itself while they're busy doing this with the fucking screen. So the child thinks that's normal, human behavior of how to interact with the environment around her. So she walks up to this big screen and starts because she thinks that's what the real world is.
For somebody's used one, I would say you could. Well, maybe she's just seen other people doing it. But the point being, I mean, at school they used to tell us you don't use a calculator until you can do it yourself. Once you could do it yourself, okay, the calculator can save a bit of time. And I think even with children, they've got to remember this. Yeah, make sure the child has a normal screen television the first time they interact with things, so they'll appreciate the improvements that have been made, and they're not going to pick up a tablet, or they're not going to start straight out like that little girl and then think, where did this all come from? What you know, how does this work? I haven't got a fucking clue. You know, because that's where technology is now. It's all specialists. You haven't got a clue what goes on behind that screen, yeah? But I mean, I used to have, yeah, when it comes to televisions. But
I was thinking of the smaller kids going to school, they'll be introducing the tech that we already have into schools anyway. So they get to learn to swipe and when they're 3, 4, and 5, and have that sort of setup of learning, and then taking it into virtual reality learning, which will be the next step. It's
going to be an intermediary step for most of them. Certainly for her at her age, you know, she's only a few years old now, and she's seeing this technology as it is at the moment, where it's that kind of swipe and touch screen interaction. But it's not going to be that long before everything's verbal, or maybe even less. You know, the algorithmic systems might be able to pick up on your subconscious cues without you even having to verbalize and whatever. But it will get a lot more Star Trek soon, where you won't even have to touch your computer. You'll just tell it to do stuff like the little devices that people keep buying and putting in their homes.
Yeah.
So she's going to grow up into an environment where the concept of swiping and touchscreens is going to be so last century. Give it a few years, and the very concept of having a mouse and a keyboard and stuff like that is going to be Stone Age, man. You used one of them Stone Age computers, didn't you? Or Stoned Age might be more appropriate. I like to hang out with people who make me forget to look at my phone. That's a good quote. It's a shame. See, again, the irony. Hashtag talk not tap. Right? You know, hashtags are completely meaningless anywhere else except in the internet, which really is geared towards mobile technology and the social media age. So that statement, you know, somebody get a Photoshop and blank out the bit that's got the hashtag on it, for fuck's sake. Oh dear. Anyway, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. I know it's been a bit sort of, I was going to say all over the place, but not exactly all over the place, but we certainly moved around a fair bit. Mainly wanted to just talk about that latest event, but I guess now, after having done it for several years, and these events occurring again and again and again and again, following pretty much the same script or very similar scripts, like I mentioned earlier, you know, the guy being on a watch list and blah, 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 that it's got to this stage now where I don't want to say it's normalized, but it's got to the stage where I can be very cynical about it and very just sort of like, oh, here we go again. Same script. Let's ask the questions, look at the evidence, ask the questions. What do you get? You get the same old pile of bullshit. Here we go again. And got the election coming up. So, yeah. It's been a bit of that kind of episode. So, yeah, episode. But thanks for joining us, folks. Thanks for joining in the chat room. If you did, hello again to everyone in the chat. Lewis, hello. And I think I did say hello to everyone. If I missed you out, I'm sorry. I'm trying to scroll up and down quickly, and the chat refreshes its cache every now and then, so I lose chunks of it. But thank you for joining in, and thanks for giving us your attention for approximately a couple of hours. Are you on Wednesday night, mate? Yeah.
Yes. I'll be on Wednesday on the reality chat, 8 o'clock, with my dodgy connection.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes this week.
See how it goes again. Yeah.
I'm still in the same situation. BT is supposedly still working on the fault, but I haven't had any progress with it. I still have no phone connection, and I've got 1.5 meg average download speed. So it's just it's just good that it's still been able to sustain to do this. But other than that, I'm still somewhat hampered. Maybe that's a good thing. But in a similar fashion, I think I did mention this earlier. Next week, I'll do an episode next week on the 9th. But then after that, I'll take a couple of weeks off at least because of the Christmas period.
I was going to ask Pete whether he's doing the 11th and the 17th, or just the 11th, or if not.
I'll see if the 11th probably I'll do, definitely, because I just see if we can still get it going. I mean, if we'll just see what happens with these new regulations, and then we might be okay. Don't know how quickly these things roll out. I mean, well, we could be gone. I don't know, or we could just stay as we are. Who knows how this is all going to pan out, really? But we'll keep going. I mean, I'll keep. And the 17th, maybe not. I might be busy, so I'll have to see how we go. But let's see. I mean, I hope I can. Yeah, I might just run up to that point because the following week, and then I'll have at least 2 or 3 weeks away and come back in the new year. Do it that way on a Wednesday evening. I think if we can still do it, of course. If we're still here to do it, yeah.
To be honest, when you look at something like the event that just happened that we're bored with, and I go to links that are channels that are still covering these things, we don't generally have the tone of voice that those kinds of channels have. You know, you click on one, terror attack. It's all a hoax. It's all a hoax. We just don't have that. You know, we don't have that tone of voice or tone of presentation at all. I mean, if you personally had to go through the different truther channels, those ones stick out a mile. Yeah, and a lot of them. I mean, that is the kind of thing that I would say. I'm not sure people should really watch this right from the bang go. I would say the same about Alex Jones. You know, I'd point somewhere something better. Yeah, because there's more emotion in what they're trying to stir up your emotion more than trying to convey facts. So that's the kind of thing they're scared of. People that can go out there and manipulate people's emotions and make them feel bad about the truth. Yeah, we try to bring people to terms with it. Trying to get them to accept what's happening and do a little bit more for yourself. Yeah.
It's a variable that interferes with the algorithmic process. You're adding a variable weight to the algorithmic process in the environment. So the process is meant to give people a certain amount of fear, a certain amount of happiness, controlling the emotional stimulation. Whereas you then come in as an outsider and you could be doing whatever. You're variable. Yeah, that's why they're so desperate to control it, so that their algorithmic structure can monitor and manipulate people more successfully, because you haven't got this variable that turns up and sort of shakes people out of the bullshit. Hopefully. Oh, James, hello. The sneaky lurker sneaked in at the last minute. Oh, mate, I hope you're all right. Okay, so rambling again. I'll leave it at that. So thanks again, folks, for giving us your attention. See you again soon. Take care and catch yous. I'm going to click the button. Clickety button.